WLTH Radio. How you doing tonight?
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
All right.
Been telling the audience a little bit about your book, Moral Armor.
Moral Armor, that's right.
And if you could be so kind, sir, as to introduce yourself to the audience, tell them a little bit about yourself, and kind of get into a little bit about what they should know about your book.
Sure. My name is Ronald E Springer. I'm the author of Moral Armor. I'm also a philosopher. I have approximately 20,000 hours in philosophy. Mm-hmm. That's the equivalent of about 2 PhDs, and it's all for one specific end. And that was to create a fully integrated moral code that is based on the nature of man. A code to integrate them all.
A code to integrate them all. Who is this intended for?
Well, you know, the world is really cut up into a lot of different sects. Just in Christianity alone, there's 34,000 different Christian sects. They're all based on disagreements.
34,000?
34,000, that's right. There's also 19 major religions in the world, 19 major gods. Mm. And, you know, what we need to do is we need a sense of unity in this world. And okay. So what I've done is I've developed a fully integrated moral code, a moral code that's based on nature itself, that allows us to draw a deeper moral parallel between all men than has ever existed.
Okay, now I would assume that most religions have a moral code, and from what I've seen, most of the morals are somewhat similar. Do you agree with most religions have similar moral codes, or do you find that there are big variations between them?
I think most of them are similar. They preach the same platitudes, but they take different routes to achieve those ends. And oftentimes, the routes that they choose can never achieve those ends, like we're seeing in Iraq. And the problem is they have a lack of consonance. They're not flowing with nature itself, and they're not flowing with what life requires.
Okay. Now, could you? So you're a psychologist, you say?
No, philosopher.
Philosopher?
Yeah,
okay.
I have a decent history in psychology as well. It was necessary in order to write Moral Armor.
Okay. Why'd you call it Moral Armor?
Well, this is, morality was meant to protect us. This is moral protection. You know, my own personal history is that I was raised in a very violent religious environment, and I didn't agree with the majority of what they were teaching me. It seemed to me that the premises they taught me were designed to simply cover their own cowardice. And, what I faced is if I questioned anything that they had said, I'd wake up on the floor. In my view, that was not moral. And if morality was to be interpreted by man, well, their interpretation was clearly wrong. So I just, kept my mouth shut and grew up and looked to philosophy, to Western philosophy, the work of Aristotle, which actually lies at the foundation of Christianity and Muslim religions, a lot of different religions out there. And I found the basis for what I knew was the correct path for man to take. The problem is, empirical reasoning, as it's called, is boring. It's difficult to understand and it's difficult to convey. After 10 years in philosophy, I felt that in order to convey any premises to others, to teach others and children or whatever, it would take me 10 years to do it. Mm-hmm. Well, it was just way too much, so I needed a much simpler frame of reference, and I'd condense morality down to 4 simple steps human beings practice. Okay. And then a realm, I've defined the realm of human action into also 4 steps as well, so you have this simple pattern you can apply to all of life and extrapolate it or stretch it out to cover every human action that is taken.
Okay, now we're going to get into those 4 simple steps. But first of all, before you get into that, you mentioned the term empirical reasoning. What is that?
Well, just if you look at the base of Aristotelian reasoning, the structure of the scientific method, and what he had called a syllogism. This is a lot of very crazy philosophical talk, but you're getting into things that are very, very difficult. It's almost, it actually is algebraic, where like a simple syllogism would be, if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C.
Right.
Well, it's simple enough to understand, but what he did in his laws of logic, which is a fabulous accomplishment, is he went through algebraically showing the whole structure of reason and how to prove whether something is true or whether something is not true.
Okay.
And while that's phenomenal, and that is the math behind even Moral Armor and all the work I've done, I was looking, that's the longhand, and I was looking for nature's shorthand.
Okay, now you bring up a question, and you bring up a word that is loosely thrown around and very seldom correctly understood. What is truth?
Truth itself?
Yeah, what is the definition of truth?
Well, here we get into the structure of moral armor itself. And truth to me is adhering to the rational pattern of cognition, following exactly what you see, and identifying things honestly by what you see, taking action on them in order to sustain life. Now, that is a simple four-step structure. What I found through moral armor is that the rational pattern of cognition, there's a specific pattern to the way we think, and we all think in an identical pattern, and that pattern is the same that nature requires to sustain biological life. Fascinating thing is, it's not only human beings, animals, amoebas, plants, we all follow the same pattern in order to sustain life. And to the extent that you do that, that defines your adherence to morality, how moral you are.
Okay. Now, does truth change, or does it always remain the same?
No, I think it always remains the same. You just have to get down to your fundamentals. As Ayn Rand said, if you believe you've arrived at a contradiction, you have to check your premises, and you'll find one of your assumptions is wrong. So ultimate truth, yes, it always stays the same. You know, look at the foundation of life. A lot of people wouldn't agree with that. They believe that existence and consciousness is subjective. The mind is soup. Everybody believes whatever they want to believe, and whatever their own morality is what's good for them, and that's the way it should be. Well, that's the nature of our massive disagreements in Christian morality and all the different moralities. That's why we're so sectarian. Now, if we see that there's one standard that all human beings must adhere to in order to survive, then they can also realize that all they have to do is run that pattern in a civil way. And they've got the individual and social realms covered morally.
Okay, now you say in your book that out of the three types of people on Earth, only one is moral. What are the three types, and which one is moral?
Sure. Well, I divide men by anticipation-driven and fear-driven. People are fundamentally either afraid of life or they're excited about it and they want to face life. So I also call these people self-made men versus fear-driven men. Now, the self-made is the moral. He's the independent man. He is the man who can complete the pattern of life without a problem. Now, fear-driven man, he can't.
What kind is that?
Fear-driven man.
Fear-driven, okay.
Yeah, he defaults on existence. He's afraid of his perceptions. He won't identify things as he needs to identify them. He won't take action. So his fourth element, instead of a reward at the end of his pattern, and this is the four-step structure we haven't actually talked about yet, is a penalty instead of a reward. Now, he is dependent on other people. So now there's two types, independent and dependent. Now, the dependent subdivides into the submission, domination axis. Because if you're not existing independently, you must either take life from someone else or take their living energy in order to sustain yourself, or you have to beg. So those
you have to beg.
That's right. And those are the three types. Now, the only moral person out of those three is the independent man. And of course, you know, we're all kind of a mix. In certain areas, we have dependencies, and to the extent that we are independent, that is the extent to which we have any pride in life, and the extent to which we are moral.
Okay. Now, you talk about these four. What are these four categories again that you're talking about?
Yes. Well, there's two sets of four. The first is the pattern of cognition itself. Now,
pattern of cognition. Okay.
Yes, and we start off with perception, what we see, hear, smell. You know, integrating our senses. The second step is actually integration or identity. Now, that is the integration of what our senses are telling us. The third step is creative action. We must take action on what we've learned or what we've assumed. And the fourth step is reward or validation. There's a number of different words you can use for it, but that tells us that we're going in the right direction. Now, everything we do, from stepping on the brakes of a car to getting a glass of water to running a business, no matter what it is, you'll see these four elements coming out. We see, we understand, we take action, we get a result. Anything you do, you can see that pattern. Now, the next thing, once you have that simple frame of reference, then you can move through the four realms of human action as I define them. I define them as individual, social, artistic, and institutional. So, you know, there's individual human attributes, and there's tons of them. It's a lot easier if you can break things down and segment them so that you can deal with something completely.
Okay.
And the point is, morally, to sustain yourself independently, to master existence itself in your relation to existence. Then when you move into the social realm, all you have to do is continue that pattern in a civil way.